This week, we look at Yosef and Shimshon and how thematic elements of their lives appear in the biographies of Rav Yochanan and Rebbi Meir. Welcome to a twice-told tale, the retelling of Tanach in the Aggadah, Episode 3. After a brief recap of the previous weeks, we touch on the fact that the purpose of exploring these comparisons is not necessarily to delve into the underlying message each parallel might be conveying, but rather to test the hypothesis that when Chazal are able to utilize thematic elements from Tanach in the Aggadah, there's a bias towards doing so. I hope you enjoy. If you find the material here interesting, I hope you'll consider sharing it with a friend.
So we'll get started. I want to do a brief recap of where we've been so far. So we started with the hypothesis, which is
Aggadah somewhere in the middle.
Right. Well, the hypothesis is that just like there are rules to darshaning halacha, there are rules to darshaning Aggadah. One of those, as an example, is when you have good guys and bad guys. In your Aggadah
good guys
stories,
are good or bad guys
right,
are badder.
Emphasize the characters in Tanakh who are good guys, overemphasize how good they are, and same thing for villains. What we're proposing is that there is another principle in the Aggadah, which is if and when you can include themes from Tanakh in the Aggadah, do so. Specifically in the stories that are just story qua story. So that was the first week, and then week number 2, we tried to trace the boundaries of this theory. So we talked about the story with Nicanor versus Yoshua and Moshe, and then we talked about the story with Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi and Sheva ben Bichri, and how that is an example of something that's out because the use of the Tanakh parable is inherent in the story. It's not a stylistic choice, it's a necessary choice, otherwise the story doesn't make any sense without it, right? And then we got to our first biographical comparison, which is Chizkiyahu and Ben Azai, and I want to sort of address something that you were raising in terms of not seeing the comparison between the two. What I'm trying to do is not necessarily say that Chazal are comparing the two, but that in using biographical, we'll say, similarities in how they describe Ben Azai's life, they're intentionally referencing you back to Chizkiyahu. And why? What we're not going to do for all of these stories, but what we can do, and I've done separately. Let me back up. A lot of the examples that you'll see here come from essays that I wrote. I spent like 10 years before we started doing the shiurim, finding these examples and writing essays on essentially why are the two being compared. And that's your moral of the story, right? What is Chazal trying to teach us by doing this? And you can find those for hopefully many of these stories by way of suggestion. So why would Chazal pattern Ben Azai after Chizkiyahu? Maybe it's to tell you or Ben Azai that there's never a good reason to abstain from procreation, that even if you are as great as Chizkiyahu, and even if you had Ruach HaKodesh telling you that you're going to have a terrible child, that's still not a good enough reason to abstain. So certainly you, Ben Azai, should not abstain from it, right? We could find the sort of moral of the story reason for the comparison. I'm less interested in that than in seeing this as a staple of Aggadah, in that whenever we can find that comparison to Tanakh, Chazal go out of their way to do so. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I don't know, like the whole, both stories really sort of remind me of Shlomo Melech, where he's like, I know the reason for this, and I can sort of get around it, like, with the marrying of the wives and all that stuff.
That's more proactive versus passive. But
right. This is passive, but it's like I would say it's in the same neighborhood, where like Chizkiyahu is just like, look, I see that this is gonna end badly.
Right.
So I know the reason. Like I have a solid reason for doing it this way, and still the Navi is like, no. Right. You don't get off that easily. And like when they say Ben Azai, guess what? your lips are flapping, but
Right.
it's
Not
time
putting
for
your money
action.
where
Your
your
lips
mouth
are
is.
flapping. It's time for action. Like
Right.
like
Right.
don't
Yeah.
okay, you can say nice things, but like you clearly understand the importance of this, but you got to actually do it.
Right.
Like
Right. No, I think that's fair. And all I'm trying to say is that if there's a comparison, part of the reason that there's a comparison is because of the general principle. Find comparisons when you're dealing with Aggadah and you're creating the Aggadah. You're Chazal. You're writing these stories. Try to find how the information you want to convey can be patterned after a story in Tanakh. Um, and then what that moral is, what we're going to learn from that, that's a separate issue. We didn't talk about this when we were going through the comparison between Naomi and Elisha ben Avuya Acher. We didn't really get into like, well, why would Chazal compare Elisha ben Avuya to Naomi? Did we talk through this at all?
not really. We
Any
didn't even talk about the Yerushalmi stuff about Elisha ben
of
Abuya.
killing the students and everything?
I don't think I learned that.
That was the early. No, that was the earlier.
Yeah.
So why would we just? I'm curious to hear if you have any suggestions. Why would Chazal be patterning Elisha ben Avuya's biography after Naomi? What would the moral of the story on that one be, so to speak? So I'll offer you one, and you can keep contemplating. It's always unfair for the person who like spent a bunch of time thinking about it to then put people who have not spent any time thinking about it on the spot and ask for an answer. So what I would suggest is that what they both share is a breakdown in how they expect God to run the world versus how God actually runs the world. And the difference is, well, let me detail that. So Naomi says, if you're a Bruce Almighty fan, she says, God took my bird in my bush, right? God is being mean, and Shaddai Hemer Li, and that's why you should call me Mara, right? She can't come to grips with how God has treated her, and she's very bitter by that, and she's raging out against God. Elisha ben Avuya, either he sees a kid who, his father tells him to go shoo away the mother bird, and he falls down and he dies, or the other reason that he goes off the derech is that he goes into this
Pardes and he sees like Metatron sitting or something.
Right, he sees Metatron sitting. Metatron, you know where that name comes from? The Greek tetra. Tetra is 4. That's why Tetris there's 4 blocks, right? So he sees Metatron sitting, and he says, Gamirna, I have a tradition that there's no yeshiva klape mala, that you can't sit before God, and Shema Shevrushu Yischas maybe there's 2 powers in heaven. So he can't reconcile what he's seeing with his tradition. That's not how God is supposed to operate. He's supposed to operate the way I think he's supposed to operate, and if I see differently, I can't reconcile those 2 things, right? So Naomi also couldn't reconcile, but the difference is that she held on. She persevered through that and came to a point where she was willing to make a bracha. She said, Baruch Hashem that he, lo azav es chazdo, and he took care of Rus. She pushed through. She didn't sever the relationship. Elisha ben Avuya severs the relationship, and I think that's the moral of the story. Kind of, what's the point of contrasting the two with your language in the Aggadah? It's to show you that if you are in the Elisha ben Avuya situation where you see God operating in a way that is contrary to how you would expect or what you would understand should be, you can rage against it. You can do what Naomi did. You can complain. You can say I'm angry at God. All of that is fair game as long as you don't sever the relationship.
So did Elisha ben Avuya really sever the relationship though? I mean, because
he says that I heard
right. I heard the gospel saying everybody can return, and yet they said that if he had returned anyway, it would have been okay. But the fact is, at the end of the day, he says to Rebbi Meir, okay, hey, we've reached the tchum. You don't go any further from here.
So that's respecting Rebbi Meir's religion.
I don't know about that. I think that's like saying, you know what? I wish that I could be on the inn. You're on the inn. Like he's like, I get that I'm rejected, but like he's not like rejecting the idea of God out of hand anymore. Like he's like, you know what, this is the stuff that you're doing is real. It's just that I got kicked out, you know, like it's sort of a wistful act. Because if he didn't care, if he's like who cares about it, he wouldn't have bothered to have his students stop.
So I don't think he doesn't believe in God. I think he has to believe in God because he went into the Pardes and he saw an angel and like he had a religious experience. He just doesn't believe that he doesn't believe in his tradition. He does right, Gamirna. I have a tradition that this is how God operates. And if that's not right, then I don't have any grounding. I don't have any connection to my tradition anymore. And that's it's to me it's actually a little ironic. He walks in, he sees this angel sitting, right? What and he can't resolve that. What do we call a question in the Gemara that you can't resolve?
Teku.
What does teku mean?
Tishbi Yavu.
No, that's what that's cute. But what does it actually? What's the word teku mean?
I don't know.
Takum, let it stand.
Right?
Let the question stand. It's unresolved, so we let it stand. Right? That's I found that to be ironic. Anyway. Okay. So we're gonna continue with the biographical comparisons, and we'll let the Alicia and Naomi thing percolate a little bit more. So the two individuals I'd like to contrast next are Yosef HaTzadik and Rav Yochanan. Are we familiar with Rav Yochanan?
Extraordinarily handsome.
Okay, we got one.
Careless with his words.
Oh, that's interesting. Where's careless with his words?
Okay, the Baba Metzia, what is it, 58a? I want to say the thing. So like,
with Rish Lakish.
With Reish Lakish, the craftsman knows his craft, right?
Oh, interesting.
So Yosef was also careless with his words. Look at my brothers. Maybe they're not so from, you know.
Okay, that's one I didn't have. That's good. Okay, so we've got. What was the first one? Beautiful.
Beautiful, extraordinarily good looking.
Okay.
That's how Reish Lakish first jumps to him.
Correct. What else? Well, let's back up a little bit. Who was Rav Yochanan?
Rish Lakish's son-in-law?
Not Rish Lakish's son-in-law. Brother-in-law. Correct. What else do we know about Rav Yochanan?
He and Reish Lakish were buddies for a long time.
Correct.
And they, monumental Talmidei Chachamim.
Yes.
And
yes. Rav Yochanan is essentially the main figure in the Yerushalmi. He's the Amora that I think is quoted more than anybody else, maybe in Shas Bavli too, but certainly in the Yerushalmi, everything kind of traces back to Rav Yochanan. So he's like one of the pillars of the Masorah. He's an Amora, as I mentioned. Okay, so what else do we got? We've got beauty, careless with his words, which is not on my list. Any other comparisons that we can think of between Rav Yochanan and Yosef HaTzadik? Otherwise, I can go through the list. Exiled. Rav Yochanan was exiled?
I don't know.
Oh. Just throwing that out there.
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean,
Dreamweaver. Throwing that out there, just in case.
Okay, so beauty we've got for sure. That's the pasuk says Vayi Yosef Yefei To'ar V'Yefei Mar'eh. Yosef was obviously very beautiful. Rav Yochanan, exactly as Charles mentioned, we have the Gemara in Bava Metzia. Yom Achada Hava Kasachi Rav Yochanan B'Yardena. So there's one day Rav Yochanan is bathing in the Yarden. Chazir Rish Lakish V'Shiver LiYardena Basrei. So Rish Lakish sees him and he mistakes him. He mistakes him for a woman. So he jumped. Rish Lakish at this point is not a yeshiva bachar. Rish Lakish is the right. He's the prince of the robbers, and he wants to go grab this lady. So he jumps into the Yarden, and lo and behold, he mistaken identities. Right.
You look like a lady.
Amar le chaylech lo raita. Rav Yochanan sees how powerful Rish Lakish is, that he was able to leap into the river from wherever he was, like Tarzan, and he says that strength your chayil should be for learning Torah. Amar Lei, so Rish Lakish says back to Rav Yochanan, Shufreich l'nishay, that your beauty belongs to women. And then they get into a whole discussion. Rav Yochanan says, if you think I'm beautiful, wait till you see my sister. And if you come learn Torah with me, I'm happy to let you marry her. And then Rish Lakish can't jump back out of the river because now he's become weak. Okay. There's a whole story worth investigating over there. But that is the shared characteristic of beauty. The next one I'll go through in a second, but I just want to remind us that when we're reading these comparisons, we're reading them assuming the explanation Chazal is embedded in the pasuk. So we have a pasuk that says, "V'yakar Yosef es achiv v'heim lo hikiruhu." Yosef recognizes the brothers when he's in Mitzrayim. They come down. He recognizes them. They don't recognize him. Why don't they recognize him? Beard. Right. Because Yosef didn't have a beard. Shiyatzam etzlam below chasimas zaken. V'achshav ba b'chasimas zaken. So originally Yosef had no beard, and also Rav Yochanan does not have a beard. Shani Rav Yochanan, says the Gemara, the Hadras Panim lo havale. Rav Yochanan was different than other men, that he did not have a beard.
Quick question.
Yeah.
I know this is stupid, but Rav Yochanan and Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai are two different people. Right.
Yes.
That's
Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai
That's
is
where
much...
I think I got exiled from.
Okay.
Okay, just...
Yeah, Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai is much earlier.
Right, give me Yavna, because we're getting kicked out. Like, that's what I was thinking, but yeah, that's Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai.
Say why Yosef had a beard? Or was he trying to be kind of a little bit different than the Egyptians in terms of dress or something?
Oh, so that's interesting. Why did he end up growing a beard? Why didn't he remain beardless?
Yeah, I'm saying in the movies,
the
Egyptians that typically wouldn't, right? Bearding would be more.
I think he was only 17.
Right, he was only 17, and he was also very into his looks.
Right.
The pasuk talks about him being very into his looks, so I don't know if he could have had.
I don't think Egypt had no shave November. I don't think that was a thing.
They were all clean shaven.
Movember,
right? I mean,
right. So Rav Yochanan, believe it or not, is actually related to Yosef. The Gemara tells us as follows: Rav Yochanan have a rugil to have a ka'azal the yasve ashare de tivla. Okay, this one's gonna.
Oh, the thing where he goes in front of the bath just like Yosef does.
There you go.
Right, I forgot about that.
So.
Huh?
What would you say?
This one
basically Yosef goes like
Rav Yochanan goes.
Yeah, Rav Yochanan goes in front of the bathhouse where the women are.
The mikveh. He goes and sits outside the women's mikveh.
Right, and he's like, well, when they come out, they're going to see me and they're going to be thinking about me, like when they go back to their husbands, and that way their children will be beautiful.
Yeah. Amar kisalkan benos Yisrael va'asya mitfila mistalkan bi. When the benos Yisrael come out of their immersion, they'll take a look at me. V'nahaveluhu za'ara de shafrei kavase, and then they'll have beautiful kids like me. Where else do we see that what they look at defines what the nature of the children? Not by people. It's imberatious. Has to do with love on.
The sheep.
The sticks, right? The sticks and the sheep. Okay. Amar le Rabbanan lo kamistapne mar me'ena bisha. Aren't you a little worried about the ayin hara, that you're out there, flaunting your beauty?
Right.
Amar lehu ana mizare de Yosef kasina. I come from Yosef. Lo shilti be ena bisha. There's no ayin hara that affects the children of Yosef. Dichsiv ben parat Yosef ben parat ale ayin. Right? V'amar Rebbi Avo. I'll take right. Ale ayin ela ole ayin. So the pasuk says about Yosef is a beautiful vine, a bountiful vine on the spring. Ale ayin. And Rabbi Avo says don't read it as on the spring, rather ole ayin, that he is assailed by the ayin, meaning the ayin hara. The next comparison is their names. So Yosef and Yochanan have the same prefix, but Yochanan comes from Chain. What is Yosef?
Right.
How did Yosef get along with his jailer?
Right.
He was Matzah Chain, right? So there's a connection there by the names as well. There's also the number 17. So the number 17 is what we'll call topological, meaning it's symbolically found by both of them. Yosef was ben Sheva Asrei Shana Haya Roa Es Achiv Batzon, 17 when he was shepherding. Dichra Kadhabe Yasivna Achar Yud Zayin Shorin Achori de Rav Kame de Rebbi v'nafkidei zikukin dinahar mipume de Rav lepume de Rebbi, umipume de Rebbi lupume de Rav. V'leis ana yada mahen amrim. Rav Yochanan says, I remember when I was young, I sat 17 rows behind Rav who was sitting in front of Rav Yehuda Nasi, and they were, dialoguing in Torah, and there was like sparks of fire going from one mouth to the other, and I didn't understand what they were saying. So he's young, and you have the number 17 over there. Okay, last one. 10 lost male relatives. So Yosef, obviously, the 10 brothers who sold him into slavery, obviously Binyamin is not part of that equation. And Rav Yochanan also lost 10 sons. Amar Rav Yochanan, Dain Garme de Asira'a Bir. Right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Rav Yochanan had 10 sons who passed away in his lifetime. There's a question if he had possibly either another son, or it looks like pretty clearly he had a daughter. But the 10 sons passed away during his lifetime, and he took a bone from the 10th son, and he would carry it around with him
to console people.
Which is just astounding. We'll leave it at that. So that's the last comparison. I didn't have not careful with his words. That's an interesting one that I'm going to have to add to the list. And if there are other comparisons that anyone wants to throw out there, please feel free to do so. We're going to do one more biographical comparison, and this is one I think we did like a Shabbos share on this very briefly, and that is Shimshon and Rebbi Meir. Shimshon and Rebbi Meir.
Vaguely.
Huh.
What do we got for Shimshon and Rebbi Meir? Any takers? Nothing. Drawing a blank.
I'm a little bit at a loss. Like Rebbi Meir.
Not strong.
Huh?
He wasn't
What?
It wasn't strong as far as
Well, we've got the name, right? I'm always big on the names. You have Shemesh and Meir, which are both illuminating, right? They're sources of light.
All right.
Okay, here's probably my favorite one.
Jawbone of an ass, like.
Not quite, close. It has to do with animals.
I don't remember.
300 foxes. 300 foxes by both of them. Vayelech Shimshon v'yilkot shlosh me'os shualim vayikach lapidim vayifein zanav el zanav v'yasem lapid echad bein shnei zanevos
Set
b'tavech.
the Philistines' fields on fire by putting torches on the tails of foxes.
Right. He ties the tails together, right, and each one of
And
the
everyone
one of the
starts
foxes
going
trying to run
crazy,
the
and
yeah.
that.
Amar Rav Yochanan, shalosh me'os mashalos shu'alim hayulol Rebbi Meir. Rebbi Meir used to have 300 parables to say about foxes, and we only have 3, and then the Gemara goes through the 3 that they had. Okay. I guess we'll just do the next ones very straightforwardly. Trouble with women and temptation.
Okay.
We could read the entire 16th chapter of Shoftim, which we won't.
Like Beruria and the strangling and the student.
No. Not even. We're not even up to. We'll get to Beruria in a minute. Rebbi Meir have a mislotses, but over Avera. Meir used to mock the people who would succumb to the temptation of Avera, meaning licentiousness. Yom Echad, idmei le Satan keitza bahach gisa denahara. One day, the Satan decided to put Rav Meir to the test, and he appeared as a beautiful woman on the other side, the other bank of the river. Lo have mibara naket mitzra v'ka'avar. So he couldn't pass over, so he really like Tarzan, grabbed a vine to swing over. Naket mitzra v'ka'avar ki mata palga mitzra shavke. Amar ilav dekam machrize berekia his haru Rebbi Meir b'toraso shavesi l'demeich tarte moi. The Satan then reveals himself to Rav Meir, so Rav Meir doesn't actually come to sin, but the Satan says to him, if they wouldn't say like be careful about Rebbi Meir and his Torah up in the Shamayim, I would make your blood like it's worth two cents. Like I could totally have ruined you here. You're making fun of people and they're the fact that they succumb to the Yetzer Hara, you're just the same as them. You jumped over the river to come see me when I look like a beautiful woman. The next one is really similar, I guess.
Respond? Doesn't tell us.
No, unfortunately, I think he learned his lesson. Then we have deceived by women that they were intimate with, right? We obviously you have Delilah that deceived Shimshon, and then you have the story of Rebbi Meir and Beruria. What's the story of Rebbi Meir and Beruria, where she
There's
deceives
a bunch
him?
of them.
No, where does Bruria deceive Rebbi Meir? You guys familiar with the story?
The one where she strangles herself?
No. Keep jumping to the strangling. Before she strangles herself.
The Scranton Strangler?
Okay, so there's a medrash in the Yalkut, Mishlei, 9:6-4-13. Rebbi Meir's two sons pass away, and they pass away on Shabbos.
Oh, right.
So he comes back from the same Shabbos together. So Bruria finds them.
They're away in yeshiva.
Right.
Yeah.
So Bruria finds that they've passed away, and she covers them with a sheet. And Rebbi Meir comes home, and at Shabbos, she doesn't want to tell him. She gives him this whole story about if somebody lent you something, what should you do? And he's like, well, they lent it to you, you have to return it to them. And then after Shabbos, she takes away the sheet and says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu lent you these neshamas, and right. So that's Bruria deceiving Rebbi Meir. Both of them died away from the Jewish people. The Omer Shimshon Tamos Nafshi im Plishtim Vayat Bakoach Vayipol Habayit Al Has.
And he basically knocks the pillars down and the whole thing collapses.
The walls come tumbling down. Al Sranim Vial Kol Ha'am Asher Bo Vahayu HaMesim Asher Heimis B'Moso Rabbi Meir Asher Heimis B'Chayav. He killed more in his death.
Like Giant Stadium,
Yes.
He basically just takes the pillars down and everything
Correct.
dies.
Correct.
So who did Bruria strangle?
Huh? She strangled herself.
Why?
It's long.
We're gonna get there. We'll get there. Rebbi Meir have idmech le ba'asya. Rebbi Meir was dying in. There's different translations for what this place is. I'm gonna say it's Asia. Amar Amerun lebnei Ara di Yisrael ha mishichon didchon, and he says, tell the people of the land of Israel that here is your Mashiach. And that is actually going to take us to the next one, which is the fact that both of them have claims to being Mashiach. The Medrash says by Yaakov Avinu when he's giving the brachos to Shevet Dan, he gives Dan the bracha. Yaakov Avinu ro'os, so he gives Dan his bracha, and then he adds this pasuk l'shuascha kivisi Hashem, that my hope is for you, Hashem. So the Medrash explains what is it. Why is he adding that? Yaakov Avinu ro'oso. So Yaakov Avinu sees Shimshon. V'savar bo shehu melech Mashiach, and he thinks that Shimshon is Mashiach. Look at what he's able to accomplish. Kivan sharo so shemes, and when he sees that Shimshon passes away, Amar af zem meis, even this one is going to die. L'shuascha kivisi Hashem. Then I just have to hope that Hashem will take care of this, because I thought he was it. And Rebbi Meir, obviously, we just mentioned that he refers to himself as the Mashiach. Okay, we'll do a couple more, and I think we've made our point. Grinding mountains together. Bein Saro, bein Eshtol. So the pasuk says that that Shimshon spent the night between Tzara and Eshtol. Amar Rebbi Asi, Tzara ve'Eshtol shnei harim gedolim hayu. That Tzara and Eshtol were these two giant mountains. Va'akran Shimshon utachnan zebazeh. And Shimshon uprooted them and ground one into the other. Amar Ravina v'halo kol haro Rebbi Meir bebeis hamedrash. What was it like to see Rebbi Meir in the beis medrash? Ki'ilu okre hari harim v'tochnan zebazeh. It's like he uprooted mountains and ground them one into the other. Next. Both visited a woman of ill repute. Vayelech Shimshon azosa vayar sham isha zona vayavo elah. Shimshon goes down to Azza, and there he finds a woman of ill repute and is with her.
First one, right?
Yes.
That's the first one.
That's the first one. That's not the Lila.
Yeah.
Bruria debitu de Rebbi Meir barte de Rav Chanina ben Trajan. So Bruria, who is the wife of Rebbi Meir, she is also the sister of Rav Chanina ben Trajan. Have Amra lo zilu be milta diasvi achise bekuva shel zona. So Rav Chanina ben Trajan had his own tragic end, but his whole family experienced tragedy. The Romans took his sister and basically put her in a brothel. So Bruria is distraught over this, obviously, and she implores Rebbi Meir to go save her sister from the fate that she's in. And Rebbi Meir disguises himself, and then he tests her to see if she's still virtuous, and she basically tells everybody that she's menstruating, so she can't be with them, and he sees that she's doing that in order to maintain her virtue, and then there's a whole miraculous story of how he saves the sister of Bruria. But the idea here is Rebbi Meir is also going to visit the house of ill repute.
Bruria is who to Rebbi Meir? Who is Bruria to Rebbi Meir?
Bruria is Rebbi Meir's wife. Right.
So he's saving his sister-in-law.
He's saving his sister-in-law. Okay, I think that will cover us for.
So Bruria, going back to the original story, so Bruria found her sons had passed away.
Yes, her and Rebbi Meir's son.
And she's basically trying to spare him the sorrow on Shabbos that
Right.
she's already experiencing.
Right. So she tricks him into thinking that she's asking this question
Those
about.
are not the same levels of deception.
True. Okay. I think that's going to cover us for this week, and Mirz Hashem next week we'll start with David's triumphant return of the Aron and the bringing of Bikurim. Yasher Koach.
Wow, you made it all the way through to the end of this year. Thank you. These series are a passion of mine, and a lot of effort goes into them. I'd be grateful for your help in spreading the awareness to others. If you're interested in joining us live, getting the notes, or asking a question, please message me on Twitter at Isaacson, ISAACSON. Thanks.